Okay, well, there we go. So thanks for joining today. We're going to do a pretty big presentation, which hopefully will cover the entire Biamp product range. Some of it in some detail, other bits we'll just scratch the surface. We'll see how time goes. As you might be aware, Biamp have got a pretty big product offering now. So we do have a lot of things we can look at. Just to give you some idea who are the people presenting to you. My name is Brian Davis. I'm a technology architect for Biamp in Europe and Africa. Fundamentally, my job is to look after consultants from a pre-sale support point of view and support our end users. I've been with Biamp since 2018, but I've been in the AV industry for more years than I care to remember. Also on the call is my colleague, Ian. Are you there, Ian?
Yes, hello everybody. My name's Ian Hodgkinson. I'm an application engineer at Biamp, and I had the enviable pleasure of introducing DSPs to Brian many moons ago when we were both a lot younger. I'm based in the UK and I help with post-sales support, so technical support and application engineering. I was acquired along with a part in September 2009 by Biamp, but before that I also worked for Biamp for 9 years on a previous life. So yeah, welcome to everybody. And if, as Brian said, if you've got any questions, please put them in the questions box at any time and we'll get to them at the end of each section. So back to Brian.
Thank you, Ian. So Biamp, what are we all about? Well, our mission statement, our vision as a business is all about connecting people through extraordinary audiovisual experiences. It is very much our belief that the AV industry's primary job is to connect people. That's what we're doing today. We're using some of our technology, some of our microphones, and to allow me to communicate with you. But it may well be, as we see it, the world return to, as they call the new normal, but we're seeing more and more people once again presenting face-to-face using our technology and getting back into offices and meeting spaces and classrooms where our technology is used to connect people together. We like to say extraordinary because our technology is at the head of the pack. We tend to avoid making me-too products. We like to make products that are focused on bringing new and exciting functionality to our customers. And audiovisual, because we're not just an audio company. Many people, and rightly so, historically look at Biamp as an audio company, and it is still a very, very important part of our focus. But we do have video products, and we are committed to developing more video solutions. We are a global company. Our HQ is in Portland in Oregon. We manufacture in Portland in our own factory there. We have a manufacturing plant in Philadelphia on the East Coast, and we have some products manufactured for us in China. We do research across the globe, and we have support offices stretched across the globe. Ian's team, the applications engineers, are pretty much able to give you support 24/7 through the support.biamp.com email address. You can pretty much buy Biamp anywhere in the world. We have a lot of distribution partners in many territories, but we also have direct sales operations in parts of Europe and in the Americas. Locally, our headquarters is in Antwerp in Belgium. I'm sat in our London office in the West End of our UK sales office in the West End of London. We've just acquired a new office in Denmark with our recent acquisition of the Neats company. And now we're well over 50 team members throughout the whole of Europe. One of the unique things about Biamp is the fact that the products are built by us, designed by us, for us. For the 99% of our products are developed by our own in-house R&D teams, and they're manufactured for us in our own factories. That gives us the ability to have a great deal of confidence in our quality and to offer a 5-year warranty. It says on the side of the majority of products, that's recently been changed. We now offer a 5-year warranty on all of the products that we make. There's not many people or not many other manufacturers who are able to stand behind their products with a no quibble 5-year warranty on everything they make. Looking at the history of Biamp, well, from 1976 through to 2017, Biamp was a leader in audio technology, one of the first people to bring DSPs to the audio DSPs to the market. Certainly one of the first companies to bring network-based DSP solutions to the market. Since 2017, when Biamp was acquired by Highlander Partners, that legacy has been built upon, and we've seen a vast number of new products being introduced to the product line, both through our internal product development and through the acquisition of various companies. So as we'll see today, when we look at our product offering, we're going to see products that are built upon Biamp's legacy and products that are built upon the strong legacy of the companies that we've acquired and have brought into the Biamp brand. Market focus, well, most people think of Biamp, will think of business, corporate environments and education. Historically, we're very strong in those spaces. If we look at areas where companies we have acquired have been were strong and where we built upon that strength, retail and hospitality is a very strong area for us, as is sports and entertainment. Public transportation has always been a big space for Biamp. And more recently, healthcare is coming to play an important part in our product focus. So you're going to see this slide quite a few times today. This is our products selector slide, and it is the slide that allows us to jump to any block as we go. Ian's now going to start, and he's going to be the first one to talk to you, and I think he's going to talk to you about a wireless BYOD solution. So over to you, Ian.
Thanks, Brian, for that introduction. Really good information. So yeah, we're going to talk about wireless BYOD. So in our world, we have a product range called Modena. So this was an acquisition, I think, around ISE last year time, I think. Really interesting and innovative products called Modena Hub. So 3 versions. The Modena Hub on its own, which allows communication via a network directly. And then Modena Hub Plus, which also incorporates a wireless access point so that you can have dual networking either locally on the network or with a local network, or a self-contained wireless LAN. And both of those are quite conventional sharing environments, so that you can share your local content on your laptop with a local screen very easily. And we'll go into detail about this. But the one that gets overlooked quite a lot is Modena Server, which allows you to have virtual rooms inside your network or on your network, so that you can just collaborate with people within the same area as you. So you can share the content on your laptops without necessarily having a local screen. So we'll dig into those a little bit. So the 3 versions, as we've just said, allow for UC device sharing and content sharing using the existing wireless infrastructure and the networking within the building. And the Modena Server multi-room wireless presentation allowing 7 concurrent virtual collaboration rooms. So looking through the products themselves, the Modena Hub and the Hub Plus obviously have a HDMI connection so that you can connect off to your local display. They have a USB 3 connection on there as well, so that you can connect to your local UC devices like cameras and audio equipment, for example. RJ45 connection for connecting to the corporate LAN. All 3 of those have that, of course. And the Hub, as I said, has a wireless access point as well. So digging into what it does. So this is with a Hub or a Hub Plus. So what we've got here is our Hub Plus connected directly to a HDMI screen, and we've got our presenting laptop. So quite simply, it uses a Wi-Fi connection between your laptop or your presenting device, which connects to the Modena Hub, and then presents that or takes that content and puts it onto a screen. So obviously no cable connection between the laptop presenting device and the Modena Hub. So the HDMI connection is from the Modena Hub to the display itself. So any Wi-Fi device can be the source. You can also reshare the content to any other devices like a laptop or a smartphone, for example. So this is quite useful in an area where it's quite a large space that you're collaborating in, and people can't all necessarily see the main HDMI or the main screen at the same time. So they can reshare the content from the presenting laptop onto their own device. And that can be, as I said, a laptop, or it can be a smartphone device. And we have a free app which you can get on Android or iOS devices to allow this to happen. So very easy, very simple way of sharing content from a laptop onto a screen and then resharing across other devices. The presenting device can also be, of course, a smartphone. It doesn't have to be a laptop, but in that case, you need to use the app on the smartphone. So the devices have 3 operation modes. So small, medium room, a large room, and an auditorium. So this just allows the way the system can be used to match those applications in terms of the number of connected users, the number of presenters, and the quality. So most rooms we get involved with are the small, medium size, so 12 connected users and 6 presenters. So you just need to decide upon installation what mode you're going to be working in. So here we're going to go into another aspect of Modena and Modena Hub Plus, which is using the room equipment like a webcam in the room. So typically the way we do this now, and many of you may be doing exactly this right now, you have a webcam connected to your laptop connected to a HDMI screen. And that's great, it works very well, except when you get into a shared space where you have cables which are often too short, you have the wrong connectors on the cables, you have dongles which get lost or broken or just plain don't work, and you get to play the game of pass the cable when you want to switch presenters from one person to another. So it all gets a bit boring and laborious when you do that. So we move away from that by using Modena Hub. So the way this works is you have a Modena Hub, which is connected directly to your webcam, which in this case is a camera with a microphone and speaker built into it. And also connected to the Modena Hub is your display device in the room. So that takes over control of all of the devices in the room. So then you can connect any laptop to that system by Wi-Fi. So that then takes the content from the webcam and takes the content from the far end and feeds it to the local display. So now whatever is on my laptop is going to be on the local display, plus it takes its feed from the local webcam or multiple device with camera, microphone, and audio, for example. So that in essence is what the Modena Hub is all about, by using the room equipment, but allowing you to do this without having to change cables, without having to even touch anything except your own local device, which nowadays is becoming more and more important. So the way this works is Modena Hub appears as a selectable camera and audio device in your UC client. So your platform, Teams, Zoom, Meet, for example, they all see the Modena devices as local sources on your laptop. And this is all, we've all done this, I'm sure, when you're switching between devices in a room currently. So to do this, you need a driver or an app installed on your laptop, for example, to do this. So once you've got the system configured and working, so when you connect to the device, you see a welcome screen on your room display, which shows you some handy stuff like the time, the date, the weather even, for example. But that can all be customized to display exactly what you want. But importantly, you've got the room name, so in this case, BD test, and then there's a PIN number which allows you to connect to that device. So the way you do that is you run the app on your computer or dial up the IP address of the Modena Hub, which was displayed in the top left corner there. I don't know if you can quite see that. So you use the app or the IP address. If you don't have the app, they're all stored on the Modena Hub. So once you've got the connection to the Modena Hub, you can download them onto your local device very easily. So you don't even have to have access to the internet for that process. So they're all stored in there. You can download the driver you need. And then the connection process is just simply by putting in your name, clicking join, and then the play icon appears, and then your content is shared to whatever screen or whatever window on your local device you can choose to be shared onto the room display. And there it is. So this is Brian's presentation, shared via Modena Hub onto the room display. So very simple process to do. And it's always best to have the app built into your or on your device so that you can always access it and are immediately ready to share your content onto the display. So that's a very brief introduction to Modena Hub and Modena Hub Plus, and a little mention of the Modena server. We do, of course, have lots of training materials on these, a lot of them on YouTube, but if you can't find them, please get in touch with us and we can make those available with you. We're very keen to spread the word on this product because it's very innovative, very interesting product, and really answers a lot of questions. So I don't see any questions coming in at the end of this section. So I think I'll hand back to Brian and he can continue from there. Are you there, brother?
Yes, I'm here. Here we go. Should be back. There we are. Our friendly screen of everything. Okay, well, I think we'll start on some digital signal processors. So this is probably what Biamp has been most familiar to you all over the years, our digital signal processors, our DSPs. Right now, Biamp have two families of digital signal processors. They represent two different experiences. They both have the same job when it comes to the co-application of unified communication, but they do it in different ways. We have Tera, which is our fully programmable DSP platform. It's fully customizable. You can do anything you need to with it. It's incredibly scalable. It plays very nicely with others. We have no restrictions on other manufacturers' technology that you can integrate into the Tera DSP or connect to the Tera DSP. And it's our commitment to allowing our customers and partners to be able to solve the most complex applications. You can basically do anything that you want with it within the boundaries of the system, and the system boundaries are very large. And then we look at Devio. Devio is a single focused application product. It is designed to work in conferencing spaces. It's fully automated, it's really simple to do, and it's there to ensure reliable and repeatable deployments. It's based around one box to one room. You know, this is a single DSP in each room, and it supports natively the ability to centrally monitor those devices so that you can have confidence that each and every room is working effectively. It doesn't play with others at all. It is a Biamp-only ecosystem. We'll see that everything that's connected to a Devio solution will be a Biamp product. But it is our commitment to simplicity, to allowing you to solve complex solutions, be it in conferencing spaces, very, very simply, and in a standardized way, which is very important to the end user base that we deal with regard to conference spaces. So we're going to start by looking at Devio. Many of you, or hopefully many of you, will be familiar with the Devio SCR product, the Devio Small Conference Room. A product that's been around for a number of years. And there on the screen, you can see fundamentally what it's doing. It's got a single USB 3 connection to the laptop, and that will support bidirectional audio. It's got the Parley microphone connected, which we'll talk about later. That's gathering the voice from the room. It's got a USB 3 connection that's allowing you to connect webcams and other USB peripherals into the system and present them to the laptop. Built-in 20-watt power amplifier, driving directly into a speaker that's going to bring you the audio from the far end, and a HDMI output to the display. In fact, Devio SCR has two HDMI outputs, and it has a built-in onboard DisplayLink chipset. So through that single USB 3 connection for the laptop, we can deliver audio, video, bidirectional audio, bidirectional video, and any other USB peripherals that you wanted to add to the SCR through its multiple USB port. So it's a fantastic solution for a small BYOD space have been very, very popular in the last 12 months, where many of our end user partners have had to conference room enable meeting spaces. So spaces that have had a large display on the wall, but have now had to turn into meeting rooms because people are working from home and they needed to have improved communication. They're able to take a Devio SCR, deploy it in the room very quickly, and provide high-level audio performance without the need to significantly impact on the infrastructure of the space. They haven't got to be putting speakers in the ceilings and drilling in desks to mount microphones, etc. Things have moved on a little bit. We're seeing more and more of BYOD becoming wireless. Ian was just talking to you about a Modern Hub. Other manufacturers make similar products. And Devio has been upgraded recently to play very nicely with this wireless BYOD type solutions. We'll notice a significant change when we're working with a BYOD solution is the HDMI signal from the BYOD receiver goes directly to the display. We're not passing that through the Devio. That display link chipset isn't required. This is because it's a wireless connection. The BYOD transceiver is dealing with all of that. Everything else is the same. We're still using the USB hub. We're still using the amplifier, the microphone, etc. But this approach is definitely becoming more common, and the ability to add this professional quality audio to these systems is of great benefit to many customers. Another trend in the industry sees the UC room systems, the Microsoft Teams rooms, the Zoom rooms. They're becoming more and more apparent. Something not quite right with this drawing, because in these systems, the webcams either integrated within the device or they are certainly connected directly to the device, which means that the USB hub part of the SCR is no longer required either. Now we're fundamentally using the product just for its core functionality, which is supporting the Parlay microphone and its amplifier and doing echo cancellation, fundamentally an audio DSP. The direct HDMI connection is still there, and if you do bring a laptop in, that connects directly to the UC room system. So the Devio has no use for its video capability either. So like I said, in this point, we're just using the audio capability of the Devio. Now, the experience that Devio gives is focused on a single meeting space. You basically have one microphone that you can use with it. So it's a relatively small space. It'll probably do up to 5-6 people in a room quite happily. The great thing about it is it's automatic setup. There's no programming with Devio SCR. You install it in the space, you connect all the microphone and speaker, and you just press the little button on the back and it self-tunes. It sets itself up. There's no need to have a programmer or commissioning engineer. It does a great job of setting itself up. And that's one of the main reasons it's been so successful in these quick rollouts, these repeatable deployments in small spaces, because it's very easy to determine how much time and the costs and the install costs of this product, because you don't have to concern yourself with how much is the programmer going to cost, can I get the programmer there, etc., etc., etc. It is the same guys who are installing the screen on the wall can set up the whole system and tune it and make it work and complete the project. It does have the professional DSP that exists within inside all Biamp products, so you're not getting any reduction in performance. It does have the beam tracking microphones that are going to support a great audio experience, and we'll talk more about those later. And as we saw from the diagrams earlier, you can, as a standalone device, have a single cable connection, just one USB 3 connection, and all of your audio, video, and everything else is going to be connected between the laptop, between the BYOD device, and the hardware in the room. But we also saw from the use cases earlier that certain aspects of the Devio are being depreciated due to the way that things have moved on. So when we looked at wireless BYOD, we didn't need the HDMI part, we didn't need the display link. When we looked, we didn't need the USB 3 cable. When we looked at the UC room, the Microsoft Teams room type solution, we saw that we don't need the USB hub because everything is being dealt with inside, and we don't need the HDMI. So we can see there's aspects of the SCR product that are not relevant in every spaces. What is relevant in every space is the experience, is the single product that's easy to understand and easy to deploy. The fact that it's one box or one solution per room makes it very easy to, you're not worried about centralized systems and networking and all the other things that go with it. It is focused on supporting UC client, Zoom and Microsoft Teams, etc. That auto-tuning, the ability to do all of this without having to program or send a program is incredibly important, as is the ability to do professional DSP quality solutions. So the question that we were asked and we looked to address is, how can we have a great product for a small room. How can we provide this same experience for larger spaces? How can we take everything that people love about Devio and let them use it in bigger rooms, where up until now, it's been a completely custom project and you've had to send in a programmer and there's been a lot of questions that had to be answered before you could even start. And we've done that through the introduction of the Devio SCX range. So Devio SCX comes in two versions. There's an SCX 400 and an SCX 800. The 400 will support up to 4 of our Parley microphones, and the 800 supports up to 8 of our Parley microphones. It's a completely new form factor from Biamp. It's designed to be mounted behind the display. It comes with the wall mount bracket already fitted to the bottom of the unit. You can remove it if you want to put the unit somewhere else, but this bracket is designed to allow you to mount this unit behind the display or under the desk. So as you can see, it's a very compact unit. It's less than half a rack width wide. So no longer are we worried about, oh, it's a small meeting room, or we have to put a credenza or a table or a rack to take the hardware. No, you can mount this directly behind the display. There's no programming or room tuning required. It supports a very wide array of Biamp devices. The Devio SCR supported one microphone. With this device, we can support multiple different microphones, PoE amplifiers, our USB extenders, all sorts of bits of Biamp, of the Biamp ecosystem to build quite large and complex solutions. The onboard, it's got an onboard USB, and that's going to do the mute sync, and the in many applications, it's going to do the echo cancellation offload. As I said, very compact with a bracket, and for applications where it's required, it has also got integrated voice over IP support, so you can connect this directly into a voice over IP phone system, and a Avaya or a Cisco, etc., and allow you to do direct dialing in the room as if it was a room phone. So we've added more functionality in that regard. The rear of the unit is very simple. You have port number 1, which is to allow you to connect to the corporate network and the voice over IP network, and that's where you can connect your laptop in order to browse to the web pages, to gather the information that they can present to you. You then have 4 PoE plus media ports. They are for the Biamp devices, so you can plug you'll see how you can plug microphones and various other things into those sockets, and they're all powered from the Devio SCX. And then finally, we have the USB port for direct connection to a laptop or a Teams system or a Zoom system, what have you. And finally, a lock-in power connector. It's got an external power unit to power it. On the front, we have one button. It's the Biamp launch button. This is the button that once you've plugged all the devices in, you press, and that's going to get the system to do the tuning. Once you press that button, the onboard DSP will go out and look at every single device you've got connected, all of the Biamp devices connected to the system, and it's going to set them up. If they need firmware updating, it's going to update the firmware. It's going to do everything necessary to make those devices be ready to be programmed. It then uses those devices, it uses the microphones and the speakers to measure the acoustic properties of the room, and it compares that result with target values that are set inside, things that Biamp have learned from our 40 years of doing this. We've set up what we know to be the best possible, what the best possible experience should be. And we use the DSP to tune the room and the room acoustics towards that best performance value. And once we've done, and that's complete, it's going to generate an onboard performance report and give you information about the space. This is an example of what might come out once you've run launch. So we can see here that firstly, the room itself isn't very good. It's only fair. It's not great. It's maybe echoey. It's got a lot of background noise. But following the optimization process, the far end should have a great experience. The reason that a fair room can have a great experience is that when the system was designed, they used the conference room designer to identify how many microphones and speakers that were needed. We're going to touch on that later on, but we have a tool that allows you to model the room, and it's going to tell you how many microphones, how many speakers, and where they need to be. And this room was modeled using that. The outcome was 8 microphones were needed, 8 microphones were installed. Therefore, the far end is going to get a great experience, even though the room itself isn't particularly well suited to doing conferencing. That same room, if it had been, say, a good room or an excellent room, may have only needed 2 microphones. It's the acoustic conditions of the room which determine, apart from its physical size, but in many cases, it's the acoustic conditions of the room. They're going to determine how many microphones are needed in a space in order for it to perform effectively. When it's looking at the room acoustics, it is actually doing RT60 measurements and all sorts of things, but we don't provide that level of detail. What we provide is a representation between poor, fair, good, excellent, and perfect. And those are defined in the design tool. Those are the sort of things you need to know up front. So that's going to tell you the definitions of what fair is. On the design tool will say, this is particular room reverb level and a particular room noise. And when you're designing your system up front, you're going to pick what you believe to be the acoustic conditions for the room. The far end experience report, that should always really be great. I mean, if you've used a calculator and put in the right number of microphones, that should be great, or it should be perfect. Good is okay. Below that, your far end are not going to get the experience that they might expect from talking to a room which has a Biamp system in it. So it's very important to look at this. And if that far end experience report isn't what you expected, you have to ask the question, did you put in the right information? Were you given the right information about the space? Did the information that you were given about the space led you to believe that the space was going to be good, but the system is telling you it's only fair? Maybe the architect decided that what was going to be a soft material wall, actually in the final design he changed it to a glass wall, and you as the integrator didn't get told that, and that significantly reduced the acoustic performance of the space. Well, then once you see this and the end user says, well, it doesn't sound as good as I would hope, you can go, well, look, the acoustic performance, that change that was made to the room has affected the acoustic performance, and now we need 4 microphones, not 2. It's not our fault you changed the room. So this is great information to at least help you look in the right direction if things are not as good as you expected them to be. And finally, you get the real-time room information report. So this is every Biamp product which is connected to the device. You're going to get its serial number and all of that information there. So no longer do you have to worry about noting down the serial numbers of everything that's off the box, or realizing that you haven't done it and the product's in the ceiling and now you have to get the ladders out again and take a ceiling tile out and find the serial number. You don't have to do that anymore. This is automatically gathered for you, and you can download this page as a PDF and give it to the customer. Once you finish as part of your handover report, here you go. There's the report of the room. You should have excellent far end performance, and there's the list of all the equipment that was installed, all the Biamp equipment that was installed. So if we look back, that's what the system with a UC Web room system would look like with Devio SCR, and this is what it would look like with Devio SCX. The 400 supports up to 4 Parley microphones. We do a bundle, which is a 400 with a single microphone and 2 speakers, and that's designed to support a medium-sized room, so a larger room than Devio SCR. If you need to go to a larger space, we do the large room bundle, which sees us including 2 microphones, either the ceiling microphones or table microphones, and 4 speakers. And this, again, is automatically tuned by a single button. So this is going to be a pretty big room now. This is a 25-meter square room or thereabouts, depending on the acoustics of the space. Obviously, it will work with a laptop, and it'll work with BYOD, wireless BYOD. It does all of those things without any issue. You can obviously go bigger again. So this is a single room where you needed 4 microphones and 8 speakers. The SCX 400 can support up to 4 Parley microphones. So this would be the largest system an SCX 400 could do. Go back for a minute. But if we had an SCX 800, we could double this again. So the largest system you could now do with the Devio solution is 8 microphones and 16 speakers. That's probably, with a room with good acoustics, that's probably around 50 people without a program. It certainly is the only system on the market today that can do a space of that size without the need to bring in having to have a laptop connected. It's physically plug it all together, or connects together with Cat5 cables. I didn't mention that. All of the cables on the screen from the Devio are all Cat5 cables, even the ones to the speakers. Press the button on the front and the job is done. So before we go back to digital signal processors and look at Tera, I think we've got a question or two.
I was going to ask you the question now, if that's all right, Brian. So yeah. Asif is asking, do all USB cameras work?
Well, in the case of the Devio SCX, the new product, the USB camera doesn't connect to the Devio. That goes straight to your third-party device, goes straight to the BYOD, or goes straight to the team system. So in that regard, that's webcam connection is not relevant to Devio SCX. Devio SCR is a transparent USB hub, although we have found there are some cameras which don't like it, but that's true of many USB hubs. So they're very few and far between. I haven't seen one personally, but I did hear of a report. There was, I might be lying, I think it was a touchscreen overlay. There was a USB touchscreen overlay that didn't like the Devio USB hub, but I haven't heard of a webcam that doesn't work. If that was an earlier question that related to the Modena wireless BYOD, there's a list of supported cameras on the website. So hopefully that answers that one. So now we're going to look at Tera. So Tera has been around, many years. First product offering from Tera was the TeraServer and Server IO. These are rack mount products, and they're fully configurable in as much as you can configure not only the onboard software and what they do, that's true of all Teras, but you can also configure the amount of DSP available, the amount of processing power they have, and the types of inputs and outputs that you use. So the server itself is just a very, very large DSP engine. It's for a centralized system. You would be used in somewhere where you need a huge amount of DSP capacity. And then everything else would be connected to it over the network, and it would be the centralized brain of a distributed system. The server I/O also can have its DSP processing capacity expanded, not to the same extent as the server, but you can select the different types of inputs and outputs. So like I said, the initial product, it was first in the Tera family, but still going very, very strong. And we do a tremendous number of servers, specifically in larger installs, in centralized distributed installs or auditoriums and things of that nature. Then we have the TeraForte, which was introduced a year or so after server. Again, fully configurable from a software point of view, fully configurable in terms of what it does with the audio signal, but the I/O is fixed. So in all but one case, TeraForte has 12 analog inputs and 8 analog outputs. That's the physical I/O. There are 3 core versions. There's the AI. The AI is audio only. It has no echo cancellation. It's not designed to work in conferencing applications. It is a pure audio DSP for doing audio mixing, switching, routing, limiting, EQ, all of the things you would expect from an audio DSP, but it doesn't have echo cancellation. You cannot use it to support conferencing calls or video conferencing. Then you have the CI, which again is a 12x8 DSP, but it has 12 acoustic echo cancelers. So each one of those orange connectors is an analog audio input, and each one of them associated with it has an echo canceller. So it's a product designed specifically for conferencing applications. And then finally you have the VT, which is a CI. It's the same 12x8. It has the same echo cancelers and everything else, but we've added to it the ability to support voice over IP and POTS, plain old telephone systems. So basically, you can the VT is an audio conferencing system in itself that leverages either the building's existing old-fashioned telephone system or their VoIP network to do audio conferencing. The CI is one that you would use to connect to soft codec or traditional video conferencing, and the AI you wouldn't use for conferencing at all. All of those models, there's 3 versions of each model. There's a version that has no digital audio networking. There's a version that has digital audio networking based on the AVB protocol, and there's a version that has the digital audio networking based on Dante protocol. So you've got a choice of 3 models and then a choice of 3 versions of each of those models. Then we've introduced the new Tera40X, and we have 3 new models. Again, these are fixed I/O, open architecture DSPs in a compact form factor. We have the 400 with 4 channels of AC, the 800 with 8 channels of AC, and the 1600 with 16 channels of AC. It looks very similar to the Devio. It's exactly the same size as the Devio, and there's many of the same connections on the back, plus some extra ones. So we have the same number 1 port, which is for programming, connection to the LAN, third-party control capability, and supporting the VoIP connection. Then we have the 4 media ports. In the Devio, they were only for Biamp devices. In the Tera, in addition to supporting Biamp devices, they are all using AV for Biamp, or AVB, but AV for Biamp as we call it, our own proprietary, what we're now using as our own proprietary bus. It'll support 32 channels of Dante internet automatically. If you plug in a device that's on a Dante network, that port's going to act as a Dante port. If you plug in a Biamp device, it's going to act as an AV for Biamp. You have the same USB connection. Then we have 2x2 analog in and out. So that's balanced audio, phantom power, everything that you would expect, mic line, the whole thing that you would expect from a full professional audio input. And we have 4 GPIO channels, 4 logic channels to allow you to interface to the device. So when we looked earlier about the difference between TeraServer and Devio, and we said Devio doesn't play nicely with others, Devio is only for Biamp devices. Now you can see why TeraServer does play nicely with others, because we support Dante, we support analog audio, and even GPIO, even TTL. Again, comes with a wall mount plate. Again, designed to be mounted behind the display. You can see that if you wanted to, you could get 2 next to each other on a rack shelf if this was going in a credenza. There's lots of other bits and pieces that you can add to TeraServer, part of the TeraServer family, to expand its functionality. Many of these do actually work with Devio SCX now, but let's just focus on here. So we have additional analog input-output boxes. We have PoE-powered amplifiers. We have control interfaces. We have large multi-channel amplifiers, and we have devices that allow us to split and extend the AV for Biamp network and add additional Dante connectivity. So there's a huge number of extra boxes and accessories that we use to make a complete end-to-end solution based upon TeraServer. Touched briefly earlier on about the network media, the choice that we had inside traditional TeraForte, about whether you bought the Dante version or the AVB version. Now, TeraServer requires, to really get the benefit from TeraServer, in most cases, you're going to be using it with a network media. It's a network media product. We don't really mind which one you pick. We sell as much Dante-enabled product as we do AVB. But it's important to decide to pick the right one for the project. If we look at how we use AVB or AV for Biamp, that's for connecting Biamp devices together. That's the primary purpose, and we have real benefits from doing that in terms of making one big network and no configuration, no external configuration tools. If we look at Dante, that's how we talk to other devices, external devices, third-party devices. That's the common standard for allowing different manufacturers' products to talk together, share their audio together. As I said, historically, when you were in TeraForte, you were picking one or the other, and then you had to put an external box on in order to bridge the two. What we've done with the new Tera40X is provide both Dante and AVB within the one device. So no longer do you have to choose one or the other. If you have Tera40X, it plays nicely with external third-party products and brings them in through Dante, and can still leverage all the benefits of AV for Biamp, for the Biamp ecosystem, both within the one device. In order to program TeraServer, you'll use the TeraServer software. TeraServer software is very tightly linked to the hardware. So one of the pretty unique things about TeraServer is there's only ever one version of the firmware. Every single TeraServer device, it doesn't matter if it's the very first one that was released or the very latest one, all runs the same firmware. You download one firmware load from the Biamp website, you take the TeraServer software, and it will update every device on the network to that firmware if you ask it to. And the software will run on that firmware, run on that revision. So if you're running on, if your software on your laptop is a 4.1, then it will expect to see all your devices it talks to as firmware 4.1. You can have multiple versions of the software running, so if you need to go back to older sites with older versions, you can do that. The reason that it is so tightly bound is that you actually can completely program a TeraServer system without the hardware. If you've ever done a big audio network solution using Dante, you'll know very well that you can't actually do it until it's built. You have to have the network up, you have to have all the devices connected, then you have to connect Dante controller, and you have to go in and do all the patches that you want when the systems are up and live. That's not how TeraServer works, because it knows everything about when you draw it on the screen. It knows all the connections it needs. It knows all about the firmware. It knows all about the performance of every single box that's going to be connected. You can design the whole system. The compiler will say, yes, it will work. And if the compiler says, yes, it will work, you can then go and order the equipment list it tells you need, and it's guaranteed to work. So it's a great thing that this tight binding of the software and the hardware means that you can, as a programmer, design first, and the software tool will tell you the equipment you need to achieve that outcome. So we're back there, and I see we've got a question about the microphones, and I'll say,
yes, Brian. So Asifa's asked a question just so that everyone
yes,
has visibility.
and I'm going to say,
asked,
hang on, because we've got the microphones next.
Very good.
And you'll learn everything you need to know about microphones in the next section, and we'll get an answer to that question. So we will, without further ado, move on to microphones. So Biamp traditionally wasn't a microphone company. We don't make 1,000 different microphones. You're certainly never going to, well, I say never, you're certainly right now not going to see a singer stood up on stage with a microphone with a big Biamp logo on it. We're not that sort of microphone company. We make a single family of microphones designed for use in conferencing applications. That's their primary use. They're called Parlay, and they all leverage a technology called beam tracking, which actively listens to the space, tracks where people talk, and mix that audio together intelligently to send to the far end. When we look in some detail about Parlay, we'll see, well, let's talk, before we go into the actual physics or the physical products we make, let's talk a little bit about the technology of microphones. A microphone's a microphone. That's what people think. Every microphone capsule, every actual piece, the actual transducer, has a physical directivity, an area in which it operates best. And this, based upon the way that is represented in the spec sheets of microphones, is known as a polar pattern. Basically, when you're looking down on the microphone, you'll see an illustration that shows that it picks up really well in this direction and not so well in another direction. Or maybe if it was an omnidirectional microphone, it would pick up in all directions. And it's always been the job of the designer, the AV designer, to pick the appropriate microphones for their job. So in this example, we have 3 talkers, 3 people sat facing a display screen. And there's a gooseneck microphone with a very tight polar pattern in the center of the table, and is facing directly towards the talker in the middle. And do you know what? The person at the far end, or the people at the far end, are going to hear that talker incredibly well. That microphone is rejecting as much as possible any sound that you didn't want them to hear, because it's physically only listening. Its polar pattern is only working to pick up the audio from that talker in the middle, which is great unless you're the 2 guys either side, because then the far end can barely hear you, because that microphone is not picking you up. We've got to say at this point, a very important factor in addition to the polar pattern is how close you are. The closer you are to the microphone, the better it's going to be. That's the laws of physics. There's no way around that. Anybody who tells you different, well, you can't change the laws of physics. The closer you are, yeah, okay, don't stick the microphone down your throat, because that doesn't work, but the closer you are to the microphone, the better it's going to sound. Now, being a load of AV engineers, we could fix this problem very quickly. We could just put another 2 gooseneck microphones and put a separate microphone in for each talker. And you know what? I will argue at the end of the day that you will achieve the best possible outcome from doing this. It's certainly not the cheapest outcome, because you need a very, very big Biamp DSP with lots of echo cancellation and some very clever programming and setting up all of your auto mixing and all of the gain before feed, all the stuff you have to do to make this sort of system work. That's what Biamp's all about. That's what Tera is all about, and you will get a great outcome. The real problem with this is, as I say, it's not cheap, because good microphones, even good gooseneck microphones, are not inexpensive. It's not inexpensive to install, and probably worst of all, the clients just don't like it. Most spaces are not dedicated conference spaces, they're general purpose meeting rooms. And to have multiple microphones all around a very expensive boardroom table is rarely accepted by the designer who designed the room. So a few years ago, the boffins came together and they came up with an idea of putting multiple microphone capsules in a single enclosure and laying them out in a particular way, and then using DSP to process the audio. Those microphones are picking up all the audio in the space, and then audio processing allows you through software to tell the microphone, I'm interested in hearing here, not hearing in this other bit, building virtual polar patterns. And this process of setting up these beams is called beamforming, and it's been around a while and it works really well. But there is an issue with beamforming microphones. You have to have good information about how people are going to use the space, because you have to send an engineer with training and a laptop to the site, and in most cases before the room's in use, and you've got to decide where these polar patterns are, where these beams are. So in a situation where you've got good information and these three talkers are where you were told and you've set it up, that's going to be great. Unfortunately, if you get bad information and you're not told that the chief executive likes to stand up at the window when he's presenting, all you're going to get is calls from the end user saying the system doesn't work properly. And worse than that, it's intermittent, because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's going to take a lot of time and effort to actually get to the bottom of the fact that the system is working fine, you just don't have a beam pointed where it needs to go. So Biamp looked at that and said, that's not right. Gone are the days where technology, the limitations of technology, force people to use rooms in certain ways. We have to provide technology that works with the way people use meeting spaces. And this technology is called beam tracking. So parlay microphones are beam-formed microphones, but you don't pre-configure the locations of the beams. The beams dynamically move based upon where people are talking in the room. It means that people don't have to consider or change the way they use a meeting space. They just can walk into a space, start using it, have a conversation in the room, and the person at the far end is going to hear them very, very well, regardless of where they sit within the coverage pattern of those microphones. No longer do they have to say, oh, the best place to sit is right there. So if you really want to be heard, sit there. That's not the case with beam tracking. So here's an illustration of a parlay ceiling microphone, TCMX, Tera Ceiling Microphone X. And it has 4 zones, there's 4 beams. Each one covers 90 degrees. And as you hopefully saw from the animation, as people talk in each zone, the beams will come on and go off, tracking where those people are. If you're in a zone and you move, the beam will track with you as you move in real time. We do 3 versions of the parlay microphone. There's the TTMX, the Tera Table Microphone X. This is it's got 4 zones, same as the ceiling mic. It's got 4 capacitive touch buttons around the outside to allow you to do meeting. It has an LED ring, which will either be green when the microphone is active or red when it's muted. It comes with 2 meters of cable already attached and available in black or white. You can see it's 18 millimeters high and only 110 millimeters in diameter. This is a small product. There is an optional mounting kit available to allow you to fix it down. Pretty good idea to use it if you can. Once you put the microphones in and tune the system, you really don't want the customer moving them, or oh, it's in the way and pushing it out of the way. It's going to affect the audio performance you spent a lot of time getting right. If they are worst case scenario is to turn them upside down for some reason, you know, anything like that. So having them fitted to the table and fitted in place is a pretty good idea if you can do it. The ceiling microphone, again, 4 zones of coverage, only 15mm deep when installed. It's a bit deeper than that behind because there's a big screw thread that sticks out. You tighten up to bolt it in the ceiling. Again, it's got the LED ring that's green or red. Has to be fitted in the ceiling. You can't dangle it. It's not a pendant microphone. It won't work very well if you do that. You need to have an amount of ceiling behind it. If you do need a pendant, then we have the TCM1. The pendant microphone. This was the initial parlay we introduced. This only has 3 zones, not 4. It does have LEDs that change color. The important thing about these pendant parlays is get them down low. They can't be pulled up tight to the ceiling. You're going to be tight to the ceiling, use the ceiling microphone. Parlay pendants are designed to be much lower in the room. Again, you need to be close to the microphone for it to work really well. Common use for these now is because many meeting rooms don't have ceilings. They have this industrial look with air conditioning, etc. And you've got nowhere to mount the ceiling microphone, so you put the pendants in. But you can't pull those pendants up amongst the air conditioning pipes. It ain't going to work. You've got to get them down low. They've got to be down at the level of the light fittings or even lower. And that sometimes presents a challenge from the end users who just don't like these things dangling. So you've really got to play one against the other in terms of picking the right microphone for the application. I'll take that point, at this point, to answer the question we had about whether or not you can use parlay microphones for voice lift. And the official Biamp answer is no. You shouldn't use parlay microphones for voice lift because the beam's job is to find somebody talking in the room. If you've got a good audio system, which you will have if you're using Biamp end-to-end, including Biamp speakers, you're going to get a fantastic reproduction of the talker voice in the room through those speakers. And so the microphone is going to go to that speaker and think it's a person talking. If the voice is coming from the parlay microphone and the parlay microphone is putting a beam directly on the speaker, you've just built the world's most effective feedback loop. And you're going to get audio feedback. So no, it's not designed for voice lift. The unofficial answer is it depends on the room. I have seen projects where there's a presenter at the front of the room who's walking up and down, and it's quite a long room, and they've mixed some of the microphone audio into the speakers at the back of the room, and it's worked perfectly well. But you can't use it by putting a row of microphones down the middle of a boardroom table and then doing mix minus voice lift into each. That doesn't work. But there are applications where you can do it, but generally the official Biamp answer is no. Parlay is not the right solution for voice lift. There's some other microphones out there that do it incredibly well. Parlay, TeraServer DSP is absolutely the right DSP to use with those. That's why we're friendly with other people, other manufacturers. Use the right microphone for the right application. We're Biamp. We don't say we're the best at everything. We're the best where we focus, but we're not going to tell you use it to do this when it isn't the best fit. That's not how we do things. It's not how we do it in this training, that's for sure. So how do you deploy a parlay? Well, the one box on this screen is fairly familiar to you. We looked at that earlier on. It's a Forte X400. On the other side, what we have is a TCMX. Now, a TCMX, a TeraServer Ceiling Microphone X, is made up of 2 parts. This does get a little bit confusing sometimes. When you order a TCMX, you will get the microphone that goes below the ceiling and the microphone processor box, which goes above the ceiling. You connect the microphone element below the ceiling to the processor box above the ceiling using a category cable. The maximum length of that cable is 10 meters. This is a proprietary signal. This is all the audio from every capsule in that microphone, all 16 capsules, and power and control and all sorts of things going on there. So you can't go more than 10 meters. We then connect the AV for Biamp connection directly to one of the connectors on the back of the Forte-X. That cable is for all intents and purposes standard network. It can go up to 90 meters plus patch, 5 meter patch lead either end. It really, you can go through physical patch fields. You can't go through other networks unless those networks are AVB enabled. Okay, so normally we wouldn't go in and out of the corporate network here. This would be a point-to-point connection or a routed connection, but physically patched, not through any sort of electronic routing. It's actually becoming very popular doing it this way because you don't have to get in a conversation with the end user about their network. The only connection to their network is port number 1, which is the control and monitoring. And that's a full TCP/IP with 802.1x and all the other security stuff on. The other ports, that's standalone. That's not networking at all. That's just audio. You know, it could be HT-based T for as far as they're concerned. It's just using structured cabling. And so you don't have to get into a big conversation about, as if that was Dante on their core network, you'd be talking about multicast and VLANs and quality of service and all these other things. You don't get into any of that by sticking in a single room, single connection solution. You can then connect the USB directly to your device. I'm showing a Teams UC client there, Teams meeting room. Could be a laptop, could be a BYOD device, doesn't really matter. Audio-wise, in order for this system to work, we need an amplifier and speakers. Otherwise, we can't hear the far end. Well, traditionally, we could use the line level audio out, drive it into a standard amplifier and into a pair of ceiling speakers, and that would work fine. But it's not particularly extraordinary, so we think we can do better. So we do a version of the TCM-X called the TCM-XA. And the TCM-XA has a built-in 2x40 watt power amplifier, also powered off the PoE. And line level audio comes out of that on the RJ45 connectors. And those two speakers, which are specifically designed for this ecosystem, they're the Sono CIC6 speakers, have RJ45 inputs. So now we've just deployed this whole system using, well, it's not only using Cat5 cables because there's a USB cable there, A to B. But in real terms, everything above the ceiling is a structured cable, which means that you don't actually have to do it during the install. If this was a new build, when they're pulling all the other network cables in, you can get these cables structured as part of that install. Means there's no more first fix. You can turn up on site once the room is actually finished and not have to be messing about above the ceiling because the cable's already up there for you. So it can make your life a lot easier in that regard if you're an installer. If the room is bigger, that ceiling box will support another microphone. Now, that microphone, which is just the piece below the ceiling, is called a TCM-XEX, a TCM, Tera Ceiling Microphone X extension. So if you want 2 microphones, you order a TCM-X and a TCM-XEX, and then you'll get 3 things arrive: the microphone and the ceiling box, plus another microphone. Again, that microphone can be up to 10 meters away from the ceiling box using structured cabling. And it is a totally separate audio signal as far as the DSP is concerned. It needs a separate echo canceller in the DSP. It can be in another room. It doesn't matter. If you've got 2 small rooms next to each other, you can put 1 mic in one room and 1 mic in the other. It doesn't matter. If you've got divisible rooms, you can put 1 mic in one half and 1 mic in the other. Or when the room is split, it'll act as 2 separate rooms. And when it's together, it'll act as 1 room. All of that's programmed in the Tera. But just because the 2 microphones go into the 1 ceiling box doesn't mean that the audio for both microphones is mixed together in the box. It isn't. It arrives at the Tera as 2 separate signals. We've assumed that you need 2 microphones because it's a bigger room, so you can add 2 more speakers. The speakers are 8 ohm, nominal 8 ohms. The amplifier channels will drive down into 4 ohms, And there are loop-through Cat5 connectors on the Disono speakers. So now we have a system that you may recognize from the Devio kit we saw earlier. 2 microphones, 4 speakers, all Cat5 cable, only one connection from behind the display up to above the ceiling. Very, very quick and simple to deploy. Yeah, very elegant solution. We'll touch on the question of team certification because it does come up. At the moment, a team certified system looks like this. This is what Microsoft has certified. We can replace it with, well, there's an extra box in there. The one in the middle, that's a TC5. That's a splitter for AVB because the old TeraForte only had one AVB connection. Another box in there called an XUBT. That's an AVB to USB converter. Fundamentally, that illustration on the screen is a certified Microsoft solution. We will be able to do all of that with just one Forte-X. But at the moment, the Forte-X is in for certification, so it's not certified yet. It does work, the mute sync works, the echo cancellation works, but it's not yet fully certified. We're waiting for Microsoft to give us the certification. So we had some kits that were available in the Devio line. There are some kits available in the TCMX line. These MSRPs are not the kit prices. This is the individual bits adding up, and it's only to give you an example of how in this section we look at how we can share the Tera's DSP power and bring the cost down on a room by room basis. So these are pretty good MSRPs, but they're not the cheapest that you could do it because you could buy the kits anyway. So a medium room, 1 microphone, 2 speakers, 1 DSP. That room's going to cost about £5,500. A larger room goes up in price because we've added another microphone and 2 more speakers. Yeah, logical. I can add another unit and make an even bigger room. That's the maximum I can do with an X400 because there are 4 microphones on that screen and I'm using up all of the echo cancellers in there. But that's a big room. I could split that room. If I added an XUBT, which is our AVB to USB adapter, I've now made a room which could be 1 large room and another large room, or a divisible room where that goes away and comes back. But I've brought the cost down now for those 2 large rooms to under £5,500 a room, from £6,800 a room. So we've made a big saving because of the way Tera works and the fact we can program it. We can share that 1 Tera and do 2 rooms. And those blue cables, that's standard Ethernet. So that can be, well, it's AVB, but it's standard Ethernet length. That can be up to 100 meters of cable. So they don't even need to be near each other in order for that to work. We can get cleverer again. If we had 1 big room and 2 medium-sized rooms next to each other, we can split the unit. We add another XUBT. We share that TCMXA across those 2 rooms. And all of a sudden we're doing 3 rooms, and an average cost per room now is down under £4,000. So this is where the flexibility of Tera comes in, the ability to share its power and its performance to reduce overall cost for the client. We couldn't do this with Devio. Devio is 1 box per room. It doesn't have the ability to be split. It doesn't know anything at all to do with divisible rooms or sharing rooms. Tera does. Obviously, you launch that, you have to program this. You don't have the ability to automatically set it up. You can start getting to some very big systems if you really want. So this is a X800 fully loaded. So you've got 8 microphones and 16 speakers. That's a big system. If we wanted to go bigger than that, we couldn't add any more microphones, but we could add more amplification if we wanted to, but we would have to add an additional splitter for the AVB, and that's called a TC5. What about, we've said we play nicely with others. So let's look at a scenario where we need more power than is available from that ceiling amplifier and those 4 speakers. So we're doing a big room and we wanted some very powerful front of house speakers, because the client, in addition to doing audio a conferencing room, they also use it for doing playing program content. So we've gone back to the TCMX. We've done away with the A version. There's no amplifier in the ceiling, and we've added 2 of our new DeSono EX speakers, and they require more power. So we've added 1 of our ALC amplifiers. Now, an ALC amplifier has got a Dante input. So how do we connect that? Well, that's easy. We come straight out of one of the ports on the X400. It recognizes it as being Dante, and you've got a direct Dante connection. So now we can play nicely with Dante-based equipment and still get the ability to use the Parley microphones in the ceiling. That amplifier could just as easily be a Dante-based radio mic receiver, and you were bringing radio mics into the system, or even a mixing desk if they wanted to. Anything you can do with Dante, you can bring in and still leverage the Parley ceiling mics that you need to for their performance in the space from a conferencing point of view. So I talked about this earlier when we were looking at the Devio units. We have software tools on the website, support.biamp.com, design tool section, and they allow you to calculate how many Parley ceiling microphones you need, or how many Parley tabletop microphones you need. Basically go in, you look at the room acoustics, you look at the room size, you look where the table is, and it'll tell you how many microphones and where they need to be. But there's more than just microphones. There's the speakers, and there's the amplifier power. And we have tools to do all of that as well. We can help you calculate all of those. And most recently, we've taken all of those tools and put them inside a single tool designed at designing conference rooms. Unsurprisingly called the Biamp Conference Room Designer. And it's a wizard-based tool on the web, and you follow it step by step. You tell it the room dimensions, the acoustics, etc., and it will provide you with a full design, how many microphones, how many speakers, where they need to be. And it will also provide you with customer-facing documentation, which you can download as PDFs. It gives you the equipment list that you need to order, tells you where the speakers needs to be, tells you where the microphone needs to be. So you get a tremendous amount of support before you even start by using this tool. You can tell it whether you want to use Tera or you want to use Devio as well. So it will give you the kit list depending upon which flavor of solution that you're going for. If there's a bundle that fits, it'll tell you there's a bundle that fits. If it's not, it'll give you've got the full kit list, but it tells you if there's a bundle that will work, a complete kit, because as we saw earlier, we do have a number of kits that we can you can order as a single SKU, and you get everything you need for that solution. So what time have we got? 10:48. Okay, good. Questions?
A couple of questions come in, Brian, if you want me to serve them to you. So first one from Lee: is there any cable limit on extending the pendant mics where, for example, the ceiling will not allow the box to be above the mic position but has to be to the side?
Right. Officially, do not extend the cable mics. They're 3 meters long for a reason. That's it works. You can, they used to be 5 meters, but they had to be shortened to 3 meters because of some American legislation regarding plenum spaces. So you could probably get away with another 2 meters, but that would be a limit.
Yeah, the official guidance in the support team is no extension whatsoever on those, just to be clear. So, but yes.
Yes, but you've got to use the right cable, and you've got to do it nicely.
Absolutely. Another question coming from Anders, and I have replied to Anders with what I think is the right question, but I think it'd be interesting for everybody. When you were talking about serving 2 rooms with a Tera40X,
yes,
Anders asked the question: is there any possibility to use Biamp launch when you're using a system like that?
I can
And
give you the answer that you'd get from product management. That's a great idea. We'll look into it.
Yes, it doesn't work at the moment as far as I can see. So you would need to set up the system conventionally with the TeraServer software, which is not a difficult task to do anyway. But yeah, it is a good idea, and we'll make sure that that goes through. That's all the questions for now.
Certainly, that's one that's been requested multiple times. So hopefully, it might make it onto a product list. Yes, you get the recording of this. There's another question come up. Yes, you will get the recording, I believe. So Ian will take care of that.
Yeah, you'll all get a link to the recording after the event, probably on Monday now, actually. And also, just for everyone's info, in the chat box, I've put a link to the conference room designer, because it is really a great tool to be aware of, and to be it really takes a lot of work off of your plate, that's for sure. So, okay, welcome back, everybody. It's my pleasure to be able to continue the great work of Brian there, and use this wonderful presentation that he's generated to continue with talking about further products. So we're going to firstly look at the amplifiers we have in the range. So relatively speaking, quite new additions to the range, some of which also were came across with the acquisition of other brands, of course. But many of you will know the TeraServer range, where we have some amplifiers here, which are PoE powered and networkable, of course. And you may wonder how these work, because they actually seem to defy the laws of physics. But as Brian earlier said, there's no such thing, and it is just clever electronics and design here. So on the amplifier models, the TeraServer PoE amplifier models, we have 4 models. AMP450, which is just an amplifier on its own, and the AMP450 BP, which is the backpack version. And then we have the amplifiers integrated with the TeraServer parlay system, and they are the TCM-XA and the TCM-1A. So they are amplifiers combined with the connection box, the plenum box, for the parlay microphones as well. So as I said, the maths on these doesn't appear to stack up, because they're PoE, and therefore the PoE port power is always a maximum of 25.5 watts. So how is this possible? Well, we use some nice design, which is based on a particular ANSI standard designed for this type of product. And this relates to how much power is available for a period of time. So the key is that we're not providing the power at all times here. So the amplifier output power provided to provide appropriate volume in conferencing is estimated by an order of magnitude. When high efficiency speakers are utilized, the calculations surprise many people. For example, a speaker of 85 dB at 1 meter would provide 80 dB SPL at a distance of 3 meters, and that only needs 2.4 watts of amplifier power. So that's how the technology works on this. And we have an amplifier calculator which is available at support.biamp.com, which supports this. So when we're using this 80 dB, an adequate volume level is, which is the target volume in a conferencing room, it may not always need the dynamic headroom needed to accommodate the dynamic range of the signal. So on these amplifiers with the PoE budget, which is defined, how do we deal with this? So the way it's done is we take the averaging, of course, of the normal operation, and we store up the power in internal electronics inside the device, so that when there are signals above the normal average operating signals, so these dynamics and these peaks, we can then serve them. So all of this is done whilst respecting the PoE plus amplifier power limitations of 25.5 watts. So the internal power reserves are then used to serve these peak dynamics. So that's really how it's done, and the performance is quite extraordinary. So going on to the actual hardware we have the PoE amplifiers, which I just mentioned, but we also have these XEL amplifiers, which are very high power with maximum flexibility. So 2 models, the 1200.1, which is a 4-channel with 1200 watts total power available. And then the 1200.2, which is 4 channels with 2000 watts of total power available. But the key point here is that the power is completely assignable between the outputs. And also they support low impedance and 100 volts, 70 volts output signals in any combination. The inputs to these is with a dual AVB connection, and this is fully integrated and becomes part of a TeraServer system and is therefore integrated or configured along with the TeraServer devices in the TeraServer software. So really quite nice set of amplifiers to incorporate into your TeraServer system there. So moving on to the commercial products, which most of which came across on the with the acquisition of the Apart range. So what we've got here is firstly a range of power amplifiers which are low impedance only. So these are great for our work in retail and hospitality, of course. Very cost-effective amplification with lots of different models to serve all of the different needs in the market and the applications that you've got. So 6 models, a variety of input channels, amplifier channels 2, 4, 8, and 16 channels, and varying difference of power outputs. I'm not going to go into the whole range, but some of the key products in this are the 8250, which is 8 channels of 250 watts, which is a really nice combination. And of course, you can bridge the channels into pairs, so you get 4 channels of 500 watts if required. All of these have no front panel level controls, but do have great indications on the front, so you know what's going on, plus mute controls on the front in case of emergencies, of course. Most of them use Class D amplification, so are very efficient, except for the 2600, which is a much higher power amplifier, so uses a conventional Class H amplifier. And in terms of connectivity, they use both balanced inputs on Phoenix or Euroblock connections and RCA connections, so that they're easy to integrate with conventional equipment with just RCA outputs, for example. On the 100 volt and 70 volt systems, or as they're described here, the dual impedance version, so they do have low impedance as well, again cost effective. And we have 5 models in this range with 1, 2, and 4 channels and a wide range of power levels. Again, the key point about these products when you are using them with a 100 volt or 70 volt line is that each of them includes output transformers for the 100 volt and 70 volt outputs. And this is really important so that you do get galvanic or electrical separation between the loudspeaker line and the amplifier circuitry inside the device. And the reason this is important is if you imagine, if you have a 100 volt line of loudspeakers going around the building, they can become very long. And actually what they're doing is becoming an antenna, which can pick up all sorts of nasty transients and noises from around the building. And those are actually fed directly into the output of the amplifier. So if you don't have a transformer on the output and you have a direct connection into the output stage of your amplifier, which a lot of people do now with direct drive 100 volts, then this can cause a lot of reliability problems and a lot of failures. So that this is definitely worth looking at. Now it does affect the price a little bit and definitely affects the weight of the product, but in terms of reliability, it really does help keep these products working for a very long period of time. Then we've got a range of mixing amplifiers, so not amplifiers on their own, but they actually have a mixer or preamplifier built in as well. So very user-friendly. You can see on the front panel here, all of them look very similar, and these look very similar to the preamplifiers, which we'll talk about in a moment. So 4 models. First one has a 30 watt amplifier. Next one has a 60 watt amplifier. So those 2 have 2 music source inputs and a single microphone input, which is a very simple device, but really has a great place in retail and hospitality. So, and you can see those are half rack, 2 units high, but half rack width. So you can join them together or have a spacer to fit them into a 19-inch rack. But of course, in many cases, these are placed underneath the service desk at a store, for example, or on a shelf or a bookcase. Then we have the larger versions, which are the 120 watt, the MA120 and the MA240. So these are 2 rack units high and full 19-inch width. But looking at the front panel, they are very, very simple to operate. So there's a large control for the output volume of the music, and then a source selection of the music. And then you can add in one or two microphones into the output as well. So very easy to operate for end users, which of course in some environments are not particularly au fait with equipment like this. Again, we employ Class D amplification inside. We have 1700 volt output transformers to give you that reliability. And then on the rear panel, for us who are installing them, it's very, very logical, so that you have the highest priority on the left, moving across to the center of the device where you have the lower priority inputs. We also have an auto standby mode. So in auto standby, if you don't use the equipment for a period of time, then it shuts down to low power mode of 0.5 watt. But then when you use any of the front panel controls or apply a signal onto one of the used inputs, then it comes back to normal operation very quickly again. So a great set of mixing amplifiers for a single box solution for a lot of smaller projects. Many of you will also be familiar with what we call an integrated amplifier called Concept One. So still going strongly for us, a single box preamplifier with amplifier built in, but in this case, it's a stereo solution. So it has a 2x80 watt power output. We also do a 100 volt version, which has a 60 watt 100 volt output. Also has paging capabilities with 4 stereo line and a single mic input as well. And you can change the output to be a stereo zone or to 2 mono zone outputs if needed. But easy to integrate into a small control system because it has RS-232 built into it. But again, very simple, intuitive front panel controls. Moving forward into a preamplifier section. So the first one is called pre-zone 1. So you see here we're using the same front panel ergonomics and ease of control of the MA series that we have there. This is a stereo preamplifier with 4 stereo line inputs and 2 mic inputs, and producing 2 stereo volume zone outputs. So these 2 stereo outputs always have the same audio source, so the same music and mic mix going to them, but you can have 2 different levels going to the 2 outputs. So this could be useful in a bar, for example, where you have the main system for high level music, and then you have the same source, but a different level going into a more relaxed chill out area, for example, in the bar. But it's all about the user interface on here. Plus we have emergency audio contact input as well. So you can override it with the building volume alarm system, for example. Then the bigger brother, the pre-zone 2, which is actually a fully DSP enabled device. So everything from between the inputs and outputs is a DSP controlled. So very different device. And the reason we went with DSP on this one is so that we could have a higher degree of controllability. So for example, on the front panel, the volume controls are illuminated with an LED halo ring so that you can see the level at all times. But that volume can also be controlled from a wall panel or from an external control system, for example. So they are not potentiometers in the truest sense with an end stop. So they're endless potentiometers, if you like, or rotary encoders, so that we can give control from other places. So in architecture, it has 2 stereo outputs. Those 2 stereo outputs can be fed from the same 4 stereo inputs and 2 microphone inputs. So you can have a different source playing in each of the 2 stereo zones, and you can have different microphones or a different level of the microphones in each of the sources. So a much more flexible approach, but still with a very simple, intuitive front panel. And the rear panel is very easy for installers to get to know and become familiar with how to connect it, because it's very similar to the pre-zone 1 and the amplifiers and the mixing amplifiers in our range. Again, we have emergency audio and contact input. And then the big thing about this one is it's Ethernet enabled, so it's got an embedded web page, so you can call that up on any device with a browser and control the device from there if need be. Plus we've also got RS-232 on there for legacy control, and then priority outputs for controlling any inline volume controls during paging or emergency situation. So that's the last slide in this section. if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to put them in the question section. We don't have any at the moment, so we're going to continue on. So next on the amplifiers section is the community range of amplifiers. So a very simple range of amplifiers called ALC, amplified loudspeaker controllers. So these are specifically designed to work with community loudspeakers and have all of the drivers and EQ curves and processing requirements for varying community products and applications. So there are three models, the 2-channel and 4-channel version. So the ALC 404D is the 400 watt version, 1600 watt is the 1604, and then the very large version, the 3202, is a 2-channel version with 3200 watts per channel. So getting quite serious in the amount of power on these. All of them have analog inputs and Dante inputs, plus they also have integrated DSPs to give you the loudspeaker control for the community products mainly. So an incredible set of amplifiers here, which are well worth a look and become part of a system when you're using them with the community products, of course. And of course, with Dante, they're very easy to interface to our TeraServer range of DSPs because we can very easily accommodate Dante in conjunction with or next to the AVB controls, for example, in a system. And then lastly, in the amplifier section, we have the Vocia range of amplifiers, which are specifically designed to fully integrate with our Vocia PAVA solution. So we have multi-channel amplifiers, digital and analog inputs, and they're EN54 rated, so great for voice evacuation, life safety systems. And they have comprehensive failover operation and redundancy in those cases. So that's the end of the amplifier section. Still not seeing any questions coming in. Hopefully this is all clear, and if you do have any questions, please feel free to add them in. Okay, so we're going to move on with the loudspeaker section. So many of you will not be familiar. If you've worked with Biamp for a long time, then you may well remember the days when there was no loudspeakers, no microphones in the range. Well, that of course changed with Parlay. And then now with the acquisitions and the developments in the TeraServer range and the DeSono products, we now have an enormous range of loudspeakers. So they are divided into different subsections called commercial, DeSono, and community, so that they are easy to identify for different market areas. So the commercial is for installer-friendly, more budget loudspeakers for large-scale distributed deployments. DeSono is elegant loudspeakers made for high speech intelligibility and full range music reproduction. And then the community range is based on the loudspeakers for demanding environments, high SPL levels, and large systems, for example, the line arrays, or speakers for outdoor sports venues and performance. So if we dig into these a little bit deeper, we go to the commercial range. So you'll see here that in the ceiling speakers range, it's divided into commercial and DeSono. So the commercial range is things like the CM series, which are very cost-effective, budget-friendly products for general paging and BGM applications, various different sizes and shapes going on there. And then we also have the CMAR range, which is a waterproof loudspeaker, which can be used outdoors or in very heat-intensive areas like saunas or wet rooms, for example, or shower rooms. In the DeSono range, we have the CM Design series. So these are elegant-looking speakers with backhands and magnetic grills, for example. We also have the DeSono CIC6 and the D series set of loudspeakers, which are hi-fi quality, great intelligibility, and excellent voicing. So if we take a look at the CIC6, which is one of our focus products, we can see it's not just another ceiling speaker. So it's designed for conferencing environments where intelligibility of spoken word is critical. And it's designed to address the requirements of spaces with difficult acoustic performance, plus addressing ease of installation. So it features a 6.5-inch two-way coax driver with a very wide 130-degree coverage angle. So this is great for covering speaking areas or listening areas in a conference environment, even with low ceilings. The high efficiency driver also gives more output with less power through the system, so it's very amplifier friendly. So it's installer focused, so it has these blind mount fixings so that you can simply drill a hole in the, or make a hole in the ceiling structure, place the speaker through, and then use the mount fixings to automatically mount the speaker into the ceiling void. And then it also has a magnetic grille on the front, which is very low profile and very thin edge, so that you can easily mount these, or makes them very paintable, so you can remove them without having to disable or disassemble the loudspeaker and take it away temporarily. The termination area is covered with a knockout, or I beg your pardon, it's covered with a cover, but it also has a knockout so that you can use a grommet if you really want to make the connection point extra hardy, if you like. So the connection point itself has 4-pin Euroblock connections, so you can easily connect in an analog form from a conventional amplifier like a Amp450, and it uses Euroblock connections with an in and a through type connection. But we also push the boundaries a little bit and ask ourselves, could we make this even more efficient? And yes, we believe we've done that. We also think about network-enabled speakers, but they have some difficulties and they have some limitations. So we think the solution we have here is a much better one in the long term. So many people ask the question, why network-enabled speakers? And it's a very good point, and it's a very valid request. And PoE is inherent or very commonly available in network switches nowadays. So it is an obvious choice to take a look at that and make the system. However, in traditional solutions, there are some significant cost overheads. So the number of the switch ports with PoE have some cost, and many applications would be limited by the number of switch ports that would be required. So yes, if you've only got one loudspeaker, it would be one port if we had a direct LAN speaker. However, if you get into the realm of having 9 speakers, for example, you've immediately increased your budget quite significantly on the PoE side and on the switch port count. However, if you take it even further to 36, then it becomes very expensive. So a significant switch you've got there, which is going to far outweigh the cost of the amplifiers and the loudspeakers. So we think there's a better way, which is what we've implemented. So what we've done is we've got a plenum box which is PoE powered. So this is our Amp450 BP. So that is PoE powered. So you just have one network switch, which in this case is a PoE with AVB network going to it. And then we have 4 outputs coming from that same Amp450 box, which will drive 4 loudspeakers, for example. Or indeed, each of those switches has a LAN connector on it, or an RJ45 connector. It's not using Ethernet directly. So it is an analog signal fed across the Cat5 cable, which is the audio signal from the Amp450 coming down. We've also made it even simpler by having this backpack or BPAC clip kit. So the amplifier itself can be mounted directly onto the back of one of the speakers. So this means you don't even need a space in the plenum space for the amplifier. It just sits on the back of one of the loudspeakers itself. So this makes it faster to install and makes it easier to find for servicing. And also there's as you can see on the right-hand image there, there's a cover which covers over all of the Cat5 cables once you've made the installation. So a very well thought out solution and a standard feature of the Amp450 BP and the DeSono speakers. So that's a little insight into the DeSono CIC6 speakers. If we move through to pendant loudspeakers, we've got a large number of pendant speakers now from the commercial range with the SPH20 and the SPH16. So very wide coverage for basic 100-volt paging and BGM applications. Then we have some more architecturally pleasing products in the DeSono range, so the P60 and P30 DT, the P6 and the P6SM, so very innovative design on there. And then the D series, which includes the same acoustical properties as the D series ceiling speakers, so you can very easily match pendant speakers with the ceiling speakers in the same application. So a really great offering there on the pendant side, which is becoming more and more popular with the introduction or the continued use of industrial spaces in retail, for example, where there's no ceiling tiles or no full ceiling, you just see all of the open spaces. But equally at home in warehouses and factories, for example, some great applications there. Moving on to surface mount or cabinet loudspeakers. So again, a large range, and you'll see this goes off onto 2 slides. So in the commercial range, in the cost-effective range, we've got the STQ series, the OVO series, and the Rock series. So the Rock speaker actually, looks great and could be used great in some gardens or outdoor series, but actually is a very high-performing speaker in there. The STQ series and the OVO series are available in passive versions, but also in active versions. So the STQ 5P is one of our big selling loudspeakers for education environments or anywhere with a projection screen, for example, or a display where you want to add some audio to it. On the DeSono side, we've got the Cubo series and the Mask series. So the Cubo was designed directly for the retail environment to fit in with the cuboid sort of look of loudspeakers or the structure within that environment. And then the Mask series, a very high performing set of loudspeakers from a simple 2-inch up to the 6-inch with great bracketry in there and outdoor rated for the Mask 4 and the Mask 6 products. And then the D series, from which came across from the community line, very high performing for AV applications where you have a lot of demands on the product. And then on this slide, the last one is the EX series, which is a new product for us, which is an incredible range of product, really is. It's really taken on a lot of the design ethos from products that we already had in the market and taken them further and further. So exceptional performance with really beautiful looking speakers and great bracketry, really easy to install and great performance, along with outdoor rating and the EN54 capabilities for life safety systems. On the larger side, on the community range, we've got the IC series and the V series. So these are great for high fidelity, no compromise applications and performance in music and voice applications. The IP6 and medium power and high power ranges for music, voice and AV applications. And then the larger systems that we've recently introduced, the IB6 and the LVH series, which are real groundbreaking products for line array technology and large venue beamforming venue horns. So really innovative and excellent products. Then we have the column range of loudspeakers. So the Col series, which are very simple, passive columns, which are very affordable and directionally controlled for speech reinforcement applications. And then the full Entasis range of loudspeakers, which came across from community in varying sizes for program and speech in AV applications, with varying numbers of woofers and tweeters arranged in a way so that you get very good coverage and very high performance in an elegant package from those. On the subwoofer side, we've again got 2 different ranges in the DeSono. So the Sublime is a very compact dual coil subwoofer for low-level background music in cafes or small bars, for example. And then the larger sub 2400 range with a larger dual 8-inch driver on there. And then the community range made up of the VLF series, the IS6 series and the IS8. So for very demanding higher power applications. So covering all sorts of applications and design criteria in there. Then we have outdoor loudspeakers in the community range, the R series and the I series give you really great performance on these. So these are very well-respected loudspeakers for outdoor venues, performance venues, sports arenas, mass transit, for example, they're heavily used in. And then, as I said before, the IV6 and the LVH series are all outdoor rated. So with their polyglass construction, it really makes them rugged and can be used in any application in any weather conditions as well. Then the horns and projector series, so the commercial series, the MP series, give you lots of different possibilities for mass transit, for example, or announcements in car parks, warehouses, and so on. And then on the community side, the R series and the incredible tunnel horn that we have, which is specifically designed for the problems that are caused in tunnel engineering and the evacuation requirements and announcement requirements in those applications. And then lastly, in the life safety range, as I said, the Disono EX series is completely EN54 compliant, as are the R series. So we do cover the life safety range, and along with the Vocia system that we have, gives you really great solutions for life safety and voice evacuation solutions. Okay, so that's the end of the amplifiers and also the loudspeaker section. Not seeing any questions coming in, so hopefully it was useful as an overview. Obviously, we can spend an awful long time with these products. So we're going to hand back to Brian, and he's going to continue from here. Thank you for your time.
Okay, well, we're just about knocking on the door of the last 30 minutes, half an hour, maybe a little bit longer. So we're just going to jump in and out of a few of these other product areas. We're going to take a look at crowd mics. There we go. So crowd mics is a unique tool. I mean, it's the one thing we've not seen anything like as a product from any other manufacturer. It fundamentally allows you to engage with the audience through the use of their own mobile devices, both for replacing the handheld radio microphones that people run around the audience with, and as a voting and polling solution. So the actual CrowdMics box is that unit there, and you download the apps from the iOS or the Android store. They're free of charge, and fundamentally connect the crowd mics to a wireless network. The users join that network, and then they can join the session, and off they go. So, wrong button. There we go. So if we look at what we're actually trying to solve here, if I go to a presentation, I mean, right now with the recent situation with COVID, we haven't had many situations where you've had a couple of hundred people sat in a room listening to a presenter and then wishing to engage with them and ask questions. But I mean, those days are fortunately starting to disappear, and we will be going back to doing this. We'll have large audiences, and we will have presenters, and people like to engage. Historically, a participant, if he wanted to ask a question, well, how did he do it? Maybe he had to put his hand up and then wait for somebody to arrive with a microphone. Didn't know if it was his turn to speak. Many people don't know how to use microphones and are nervous about them. And perhaps they just don't like asking the question out loud. Perhaps they want to ask a question, but like to do it in a different way. If I'm the presenter, I've got problems. I'm up on a stage, the lights are on me. I can't really see the audience that well, so I don't know necessarily somebody wants to ask a question. All too often, somebody at the front of the crowd will ask a question and the people at the back are shouting, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. And we have to the presenter has to restate the question, or you have to wait for the microphone to arrive and ask the person asking the question to ask it again. You're not certain who said it, and you certainly have very little control of who's speaking next. If you just stood at the front of the stage and pointing a finger, it's your turn. All too often we find, you know, somebody's asking a question and then somebody has to jump in, and there's no way of managing that. So CrowdMics was designed to solve those problems. You don't have to play past the mic. There isn't a radio mic and people running around with it. Everybody has their own microphone. It's in their pocket. It's their phone. In addition to being a microphone, it also has the ability to allow you to text questions for the presenter to see, and the presenter to set up and run polling and voting, and get that information back in real time from the audience. So, like I say, fundamentally, you join on your phone, you have the app, you press the button to say, I would like to talk. The moderator app, which is in front of them, it's either on an iPad or is served from the CrowdMics box onto a web page. He can see a list of people wanting to talk. They then select your turn to talk, and the app says you can speak, and you press and hold the button. And when you're holding that button, you're able to talk. If you don't want to ask the question, as I say, you could submit the question via text, and that will appear on the moderator screen. And the moderator has the ability to share that question via a HDMI output on the device and show it on a big screen, or not. They don't have to. They can choose whether to share it or not, or the comment. If they don't feel the comment's relevant, or they don't have to share it. And then obviously they can do voting. So they could set up a poll, and the large screen will show the question and actually show the results as well. So the moderator app, like I said, is available as a separate app on an Apple device, iOS device, or available through the web page from the device, and gives you all the tools you need to control it. So you know when somebody wants to talk, you can choose who's going to talk, you can stop somebody, turn their mic off. It allows you to create the polls and run them. It allows you to show the results from the polls. It logs the questions that are asked, but it doesn't store who asked them. We don't identify the user. We don't extract any information from the mobile devices about who's who. And then you have the ability to monitor and manage the Atom. It's called the actual CrowdMics device via its web pages. So this is the CrowdMics hardware, the Atom. Pretty straightforward box. The most important connector is that balanced audio output. You can think of this like in a basic radio mic receiver. You could take that line level output, put it into an XLR and plug it straight into a desk as if it was a radio mic receiver. The actual system deployment, again, is fairly straightforward. You have the two LAN connections, one to connect to the client LAN so you can get to the web pages, and my TV has decided that it wants to turn itself off because I hadn't pressed the button for a long time. There we go. You can connect that client LAN to access the device and to get to the management pages. You have a second port, and that's for the event Wi-Fi. Now, depending on the size of the audience, there are situations where you wouldn't want to be on a shared Wi-Fi. You wouldn't want a Wi-Fi doing other things. I mean, this theoretically, an Atom can support up to 1,000 users, but you'd have to build a very complex Wi-Fi infrastructure to support 1,000 concurrent users in this space. So you can leverage the existing Wi-Fi infrastructure if it's configured effectively, or sometimes it's easier to put in a separate set of wireless access points and a separate SSID and get people to connect to that. As I said, you can access the moderator web pages either through the app or through the LAN connection. The HDMI output is going to put the questions on the screen, it's going to put the polling results, and the audio output, in this case, I'm showing a direct analog audio output to the amplifiers, but that could be to a desk. In fact, we've got a number of output options. You can come out the unbalanced audio jack, or you can even come out on the USB connectors and have a direct USB audio output for something that's got an USB audio input. So that is audience engagement.
A little question on that, if that's okay, Brian. Asif is asking, can CrowdMics be used with UC? I think he's meaning, can we have a conference with the use of CrowdMics at the same time? Which is kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, the thing about crowd mics is it's a one-way audio signal. You're not getting stuff coming back from it. Yes, you should be able to. It would depend somewhat on the environment. The wireless infrastructure does in itself add an amount of latency to the audio. So you are going to have some lag, not significant lag, it depends on the wireless.
No, it's very insignificant actually. Yeah.
So that, I don't see why it wouldn't work.
Yeah, the other thing to mention maybe, which I don't think you covered, is that we also do the online version of crowd mics now.
Yes.
So that you can. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, Ian. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so we have the online version of crowd mics so that you can host a meeting, for example, or a presentation, and then use crowd mics for voting and for asking questions remotely. So you could use a UC client, for example, for presenting to a wider audience like we're doing now. And then we could also have a crowd mics online session so that people can talk into the system and also ask questions via that. So if you're not using a system like we're using with GoToWebinar, you could easily incorporate that into the system as well. So that really opens up some great possibilities with crowd mics also.
Exactly. I am going to touch on our control solutions. It is a quick little one. So many of you hopefully will have seen that we recently acquired a company from Denmark, a control company from Denmark called Neats. Been around many years, and the full control system solution. And then, of course, we have the control system technology that was inherent inside TeraServer. So we will have a quick look at the TeraServer solution first. So most recently introduced was our new TechX 1000 and 2000 control pads. These connect directly to the TeraServer family, so the TeraServer, any of the TeraServers, including the TeraForte-X, and they allow you to interact directly with the onboard logic programming functionality of TeraServer. They're a fully configurable LCD-based keypad, if you like. You can change the text on the buttons, and you can change the number of buttons that are shown, but it's not a touch panel. You're not going to put graphics on there or anything like that. It's a software configurable a touchscreen-based keypad. You do have the one version with the endless encoder, the scrolling wheel, which is also a push button as well. And they're very nice looking, and the optional table mount kit is now available, and that has the cable integrated, so it's a very good way of getting the amount of control you sort of need in a small meeting room to turn the display on and off and put the volume up and down and maybe select sources. It's ideal for that, and you don't need any additional control technology to do that. The TeraServer device itself will allow you to provide some control. We also have the Tech One. These have been about many, many years. Very reliable, simple to use device. Like I say, we've had them forever. Again, they interact directly with the onboard logic programmable functionality of TeraServer. We have the HD1, the tabletop dialer. This is a specific piece of hardware designed to support the VoIP or POTS functionality inherent in TeraForte and TeraForte-X. So if you were installing a Forte-X and you wanted to be able to use its onboard VoIP dialer, you've got a couple of choices. You would either get a third-party control system, or you could just get the HD1, and that would sit on the table and act like an ordinary phone. You literally just dial the number. It has the ability to have some phone book functionality, control some volumes. It's literally just all the functions you need to control telephone functionality. And then we have Biamp Canvas. Canvas has, how can I put it? Canvas is a fantastic tool that allows you to generate an interactive control surface from the TeraServer software. So you design your TeraServer design, and then you can pick up elements of it and drop it into Canvas, and it's going to make an executable file that you can run on a Windows laptop or Windows machine and control that system. Canvas hasn't really had any significant development for several years now. They were looking at going down some different routes with control. So it isn't, Canvas doesn't support all the functionalities inherent in TeraServer right now, but it's a great tool for providing technician type control. We still use it quite often in rack rooms to allow technicians to plug their laptops in and do some routing controls, some preset records, etc. But it's less used for an actual end user type interface, because it doesn't really live up to the UI expectations that are now presented through web-based control interfaces. Going back and having a quick look at needs, and it is a quick look because I've only had a very brief overview of it. Needs make control pads. Now, a control pad is a device that has the user interface and the control capability built into a single device. The most recent control pad release is the Uniform. Now, the Uniform uses electronic ink as its display, so like a Kindle. It isn't a touchscreen, and it isn't designed for, it isn't dynamic. These buttons, these icons are not designed to change once it's been configured. The whole point of this solution is it saves you having to have those little bits of paper printed out and slide them in behind buttons. You can configure this, that whole display is configurable through software, and once it's configured, it doesn't change. You're not going to press a button and that mute icon isn't going to change. The button has a light behind it that lights up and changes. But basically, it's not a touchscreen, and it's not a dynamically changeable user interface. But it is a configurable user interface during setup and subsequently. Very nice mounting arrangement. Plate that screws on the wall. Metal plate screws on the wall. It's got multiple different holes in it to support different regions, and then this unit pops in and sticks to it with very strong magnets. And the programming software, from what I've seen, is very, very straightforward, drag and drop solution. They then have full graphical user interfaces in terms of touchscreens. These are devices work in conjunction with the rack mount control solutions, or the control processors, and they allow you to have fully dynamic programmable control surfaces, the same as you would expect from any control system manufacturer. There's 3 control processors. They have different amounts of control connectivity, so different numbers of RS-232 and different number of LAN devices they can support, GPIOs, etc., etc. And these can be used on their own and can be controlled via the web pages that they serve, or more commonly, they're used in conjunction with the touch panels that we saw on the previous slide. So that's our control solutions. Quick knock on the door of public address. Biamp, historically, for many, many years, this has been a very big player in the public address and voice evacuation solutions through the use of its Webcam device. Webcam is a fully configurable EN54 rated networked PAVA solution. It's decentralized, the amplifiers are decentralized, the software, the network is fault resilient, everything you need to have in order to be rated as a life safety product. I mean, it's still a very effective standalone PA system, multi-zone PA system, but we find most of its use is in large environments. I think one of the biggest deployments we've got is Keflavik Airport. We're doing a big rollout at Schiphol Airport right now. one of the reasons it's very popular is it's so flexible that you're able to bridge other people's legacy PA systems into it. So in Schiphol, some of the different terminal areas were done historically with another manufacturer's system, but they couldn't expand that system any further. So when they're adding the new piers, that's all being done through Vuccia, and then Vuccia is actually also being integrated into the existing amplification that's there from the other manufacturer, so that we can make one system, one life safety certified system, but actually use other existing pieces of equipment. Because as you can imagine, the costs inherent in replacing an entire PAVA system in an airport the size of Schiphol would be cost prohibitive if it didn't have to happen. From the other side, from the non-life safety paging situation, we've just released a new TeraServer paging station, the NPX. And the NPX is compatible with TeraServer and with our sound masking solution, which we haven't talked about yet. So we'll go and talk about that now. And this, I think, is pretty much the last section. And that should take us through to just about 12, which is good. Cambridge Sound Masking was a company we acquired about 2 years ago. It's a very significant player in the sound masking space well, globally, but the biggest sound masking market in the world is North America. And sound masking is a solution that is actually designed to do two things. One is to protect speech privacy, to make it difficult for people to overhear what other people are saying, and also to reduce the distractions which are inherent in open plan spaces when other people are talking, say on telephones or having conversations, and they distract other workers in that space. So the point of sound masking is to make speech less intelligible, to introduce sound into a space that covers up human voices. It doesn't remove them. It's not like a noise cancelling headphone that tries to take sound away. You're actually adding more sound to a space, especially tailored sound that prevents you understanding. You can still hear that somebody's talking, but you can't understand what they're saying. There are two fundamental types of sound masking. There's ones that live above the ceiling, and there's ones that are in the ceiling pointing down into the space. We do both with Cambridge. And then we also have solutions that support paging and background music in the same system. Oh, what I meant to do is click on that. So sound masking introduces a consistent level of an ambient noise into a space. Consistency is important. It's probably the most vital part of this. We're introducing a noise. It's a specially tailored noise. It's not white noise. It's a specially tailored audio spectrum. But if you've never heard it, that's probably the thing that in an office that comes the closest is air conditioning. So if you're in an office and the air conditioning is on, and you walk into the space and the air conditioning is on, you don't really notice it until somebody turns it off, and then you really notice it. Or you notice it if you're moving from one space that has the air conditioning noise to another that doesn't, and then back into a space that does. You notice the different levels of the background noise. What we try to do with sound masking is add a noise that is consistent at all points in the space we're covering, because that way people don't notice it. It can do its job, but people don't know it's there. The sound spectrum that's used is specifically engineered to match the frequencies in which we hear. It's not white noise. It's not just a very unpleasant psh all the time. It's a very specifically tailored noise that is set up exactly to mimic where the strongest sound levels come in the human voice. When it's implemented properly, you don't notice it. It's just there in the background of space. But what it does is reduce the radius in which you can understand what somebody's saying. So the whole point is trying to make sure that that somebody that's 2 cubicles away who's talking on the phone, you can't hear them. Now, the human try an experiment. You go into a coffee shop, and if it's a coffee shop that there's only 1 or 2 people in it and it's quite quiet, and somebody's talking on their mobile phone, and you try and write an email, you will find yourself being distracted by what that person is saying on their phone, if you can hear them and understand them, whether you want to or not, or 2 people having a conversation. You're not trying to overhear them, but your ears do it. Your brain is trained to listen for communication. So every now and again, you'll realize you've stopped typing because you just, did he really say that? If you go into a really noisy coffee shop where the sound levels are much, much higher and there's much more of a hub, it's very easy to write an email. It's not the noise that's distracting you. It's the understanding of that noise. Lots of voices talking where you can't understand a single one is much easier for your brain to filter out than an individual person talking. And so this is what sound masking is trying to do. We're introducing a continuous noise that is preventing you from hearing and preventing you from understanding what a single person is saying, not necessarily preventing you hearing the noise of them talk. So we're trying to do 3 things. Protect speech privacy. That's where we put sound masking outside of meeting spaces. All too often, meeting spaces are not built incredibly well in terms of their ability to stop sound exiting. So you can very simply add sound masking outside in the public areas, outside meeting spaces. And while it won't stop you being aware that somebody in the meeting room is talking, it will work really well to prevent you understanding what they're saying if you're just walking down the corridor. If you stop and actively listen, then you can probably hear what they're saying. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to stop people accidentally overhearing things they shouldn't. In the US, it's used quite commonly in pharmacies, doctors' waiting rooms, banks, anywhere where overhearing what's being said by 2 people speaking could be challenged legally, in fact. They have to be seen to put solutions in to prevent that happening. We've talked about reducing noise distractions. That's about stopping the distraction reduction, as the coffee shop example. And through reducing that distraction, you can increase workplace comfort. People don't feel so concerned that people are overhearing their conversations, but also they can work better. They're not distracted. They can focus more. Just thread all of that out. So there's 2 different approaches to sound masking, dependent upon, often dependent upon what the architect wanted. Direct field is where a large number of very small emitters, speakers, as we call them emitters, are mounted throughout the ceiling, pointing down into the space. Very quick to install, category cabling, very simple to put in. Actually, probably the most effective, certainly the easiest to configure, and very effective in situations where you want a hybrid system that's doing sound masking and background music and paging. These direct emitters would be the way to go. And then we have the more traditional solution, the indirect field, the plenum field, where larger speakers are installed above the ceiling, and they fire up towards the concrete slab, and then that reflects and bounces down. It's often specified by building designers. In many cases, it's because that's all they know. It's much more difficult to get uniformity of coverage, because, as you know, there's loads of other things happening above the ceiling. There's air conditioners, there's vent holes, there's all sorts. So it's a much more challenging solution to tune, but it's very effective when done properly, and you don't see the emitters in the ceiling. But it doesn't work particularly well for background music or paging, because those emitters being above the ceiling, you lose a lot of the fidelity that you need for background music or for voice. We have two product families. QT Pro is the entry-level direct field solution, very, very simple to install and configure. And then we have QTX, which is our solution for doing both direct field and indirect field. And this has newly been introduced. It has there's a vast array of controllers that can suit different applications. It has onboard version with Dante or with AVB, so that you can stream background audio to it, or you can interlink the systems, or use the MPX microphone that we talked about earlier and do paging through it. So it's the devices are Plenum certified, so you can put them in the ceiling space. They're PoE powered. It's a great, effective and elegant solution for sound masking. And there we go. We've hit 12 o'clock. And we have covered pretty much everything. We saw the software when we were doing the microphone pieces, and we talked briefly about the solution bundles in the other space. So I think that about does it. Do we have any questions, Ian? I don't think we have any new questions.
No questions coming in. I think everybody has been overloaded a little bit with information, but I think it's a very useful thing to do, to give an overview like this. And just to let everyone know that we'll be doing this training quite regularly, and it will automatically update and adjust with new products and new information that we have, or when new products are introduced, we'll add those into this. So it's really good, I think, to do this so that people can have a reset about what Biamp is all about. Or if you have new people joining your company, it'd be great for them to join this presentation, or once in a while join it to get an update to see what's happened since the last time you attended. So I'd really like to thank Brian for this great presentation. It's a real work of art, let's say, in the presentation world. So it's and I know it's been a labor of love for you, but it's really come to fruition now, and I think it's going to continue to be very useful for everyone in the future. So thanks a lot, Brian. I'll leave it to you to wrap up.
Great. Well, thanks for your time, guys. I really appreciate it. I know it's it's a lot to swallow. It's a lot to go through, and it's a long presentation, but such is it's not going to get any shorter. The way that we're progressing, you can just see there'll be a lot more information in there about NEETs before long, etc., etc. So there we go. Thanks again for your time, and we'll end it there. So thanks, guys, and see you next time.